was January of 2016, and Anna and I were on a 40-day liquid fast. And I can't necessarily remember what day it was specifically, but I remember one morning early sitting with the Lord in prayer, and I broke into a vision in my time of prayer, and I saw what looked like a night of worship gathering, but I knew that it was in a studio setting. It was a smaller venue. It looked like a studio, and there were several others that were gathered with us. I knew that we were the ones that were leading this, and I saw Anna, and I saw a few others that were helping to contribute in worship, and I saw speakers, and I saw preaching and ministry and worship and all like this collective, and it all came in a vision. And I remember coming out of my time of prayer and being really shaken by the things that I had seen. And I pulled Anna aside and I said, "Babe, I really saw something this morning. Like God showed me something in prayer this morning." And we began to discuss the details of what I felt like I had seen. And that's when, talking about it in the moment, I found out that it wasn't necessarily something that originated with me, but as I began to share the details of what I had seen that morning in prayer, she said, "Yeah, I really feel like the Lord showed you that because of things that she had seen prior." So why don't you share what you had seen prior that you told me about, that we had never talked about?
It was actually in 2015, Mike had presented asking me the idea of me going into the studio myself. And every time he would talk about it, it just didn't sit right because I had known what I had seen previously. And the idea of me just going into a studio to record, it didn't seem right because of what I had seen before. And so 2015 passed, and like he said, when we were on this fast in the beginning of 2016, and he came to me with what he saw in a vision, and it immediately brought me back to younger years of having dreams and daydreams of something like this coming about. It's always been my heart to see prophetic worship rise, and so him presenting it to me, I was ready for it. I feel like I had walked through a process with the Lord, much like Joseph, where he'd been given a dream, and yet still he had to walk out the process of the Lord in order to see the dream come about. And that was much of what I had to do. There was a process of becoming that I had to walk through in order for it to come about the way it has. And I'm just thankful for what he's done and the dreams that he's given and the way that he, in his own timing, breathes on it and allows it to come and to flourish in the way it has.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great point, because when I had talked to her about having the vision that morning in prayer, she's right. The year before, probably 1 year before exactly, I was trying to encourage her to get into the studio later that year. I said, "Babe, I really think that, this is the right time. Like, I really think this is God." And it would have been a great opportunity. There would have been successful things that could have happened. However, because she went into a process of praying and fasting, she had come back to me and she said, "I really just don't think that it's the right time." And now I have been waiting for years to see something like this happen. And so as her husband, I've been excited, and at different points, like trying to not push her in a manipulative way or in a negative sense, but I've been excited to try to push her or to propel her into, things that I know God has spoken to her and over her. So when she came back to me and she said, "Hey, listen, I really don't feel like that this is going to be the year to do it, or even necessarily what we're thinking about doing. I just don't think it's right." So part of me was like, "Oh man, here we go again. We're waiting, this, that, whatever," which is cool. But that morning when we talked about it, we really felt like we had been given an invitation from the Lord to step into something, which was very different than in days past. In days past, we had come up with great ideas. But there's a huge difference between having a great idea and something that you're trying to bring to the Lord, and then having the Lord invite you into something. And so we looked at each other that morning and we said, there's no real way that we should be able to pull this off. We don't have the resources, we don't have the finances, we don't have the knowledge of the industry, like nothing. There's no way that this should happen for us. But we made a decision that morning as we looked at each other and we said, babe, if this is what God is saying, let's throw our life into it and see what he does. And it was later on that week that I had called John, and I just began to share, because I'm telling you, I saw it. This wasn't like, oh, hey, this is something, a cool idea. I was taken into something in prayer. I felt like I was there as I was seeing it. So even the way that I communicated it, I relate to, Jeremiah says his word was like fire shut up in my bones. I felt like I was carrying something from God that was burning in us, and we were burning to see it not just be carried within us, but to bring it out and to actually see it happen in real life. And as I've walked with Jesus, I've just come to learn over years of trial and error that your provision is in the invitation. And in most cases, why we never move is because we wait for provision to come and meet us where we're standing before we start moving. But your provision is in your invitation. And I've learned that all I need to know is that God is talking about it. Not something that I'm talking about. Like, we didn't start the conversation. This was something he started talking about. He brought it to us. But I've just learned that anything that God is willing to talk about, he's more than willing to cover. He's more than willing to provide for. He's more than willing to open every door, connect every dot, mesh together the relationships, whatever is necessary over the process and the journey. If he talks about it and we step into what he's talking about, the provision is found in the invitation. So when we know what God is saying, when we start moving, even against not being able to see, even against not necessarily having the pieces that we feel are necessary or required in order to make progress, when all we know is, I've heard something and I can't shake what I've heard. If you'd be willing to move on what you've heard, provision will meet you as you're moving. But many times we find ourselves not moving because we're waiting for God to start providing. But it's actually backwards. And so we just decided, hey, we're just going to start moving and we'll throw our life into it with everything that we've got. And some crazy stuff actually started happening. And that's where I called John, and we asked him if he would be willing to be involved and to help us in the form of producing.
And if there's anybody that has even walked with me through the process of becoming, it's these two. I remember being shy and timid, would not even lead a song, would not even sing, but this guy walks into our life and just really gave me the push forward and the confidence to just believe that there was something on my life worth sharing. And so there's nobody that we would have called other than John Wilds.
Isn't the name of Jesus wonderful?
When they came to me, I think, Mike, you called me first, and then we decided to meet up and kind of talk about things. And I was just kind of blown away that we were even talking about this. She did have just this timidity and just shy, but had such power within always, as long as I can remember at least. But, would not even sing to lead a song. And she was in the choir. You remember that? And someone told me, I don't remember who it was, that said, Anna had a great voice. You need to hear her. And so I ended up hearing her sing, and I said, you're singing on Frontline. You're singing on the worship team. She's like, no, I'm not. And I was like, yes, you are. It's not even a question. It's going to happen. And long story short, she ended up doing that, and just really, wow. Every time she opens her mouth to sing, it's obviously not just the gift that's there, it's the anointing behind the gift. And so, and also with the relationship that I have with her and Mike and my family and their family, it was a no-brainer to be a part of this because we've all walked together for so long and been through the ups and the downs together. So it was a no-brainer that I wanted to be a part of anything that they were doing, just because I believe in them so greatly, both of them and their ministry and their call. But also, I didn't realize what was happening inside of me at that time. I didn't know that saying yes, first of all, I didn't know what I was saying yes to, but the yes, just yes, I didn't even have to think about it, just yes. And then after I left, I had to think about what that meant. Mm-hmm. Like, what did I just say yes to? I know who I said yes to, but what was I really saying yes to? And it's so funny how God works, because for so many years, I've wanted to do something like this, but struggled with the insecurity of not feeling like I could even do something like this, that I wasn't capable of it, or that I didn't have what it took to do it. And, some people would think, it's crazy, you're a worship leader. I've been doing it for a long time now, but still, there was this element that was missing that I felt like, man, I would really love to do that. It was a dream of mine. But would not do it for myself, and always felt I needed someone else to do it. And so these two, as God has always been instrumental using them in my life and in my family's life to just really bless us, and it's just been a great journey. But I didn't know he was going to use these two to rid me of insecurity and fear and doubt and intimidation and all those things. I said yes without even realizing what was going to happen. And so anyway, I said yes, and then I said, Lord, what did I just say yes to? And I remember posting about it and saying, it's the very thing that you think you're incapable of doing that God will use you to do. As long as you give him a yes, just say yes to the Lord. And when you give him your yes, it obviously means so much more than you're aware of. And he knows the end from the beginning. You just tell him yes, and he does what he does best. And so we get into this process. We start talking about songs and arrangements and all this kind of stuff, and then everything just came together. And so, it's obviously been an honor to be a part of this. But my mind is blown on so many levels. First, that we were even talking about doing this, that Anna is doing this, that she is leading worship and recording an album, that their ministry is being used so greatly. Because if you knew where we came from, there was something. That's what I call it. There's a lot of something that we had to walk through to get to this point, but it was all necessary for us to be who we are today. And so I knew that because of their hearts, because of their prayer life, because of their relationship with God, and all that stuff, that God was going to breathe on this and do so much more than any of us could do. Because they're very talented, but I am not all that. So I knew if God was going to, if anything was going to come of this that was good, it was going to have to be God. I'm just honored that you guys called me to be a part of it.
And I think you bring up a great point. Because for anybody that may be watching, or for people that see these types of things happen, I think that there's always the idea or the thought, that very easily creeps into people's hearts, like, I could never do something like that. Like you've got to be a special type of individual, or you've got to have, like a walk with the Lord that is, entirely separate from what's possible for a normal person. And that's very far from the truth. Even talking about, I remember days sitting in your car, the Mustang.
Don't go there.
At 11 o'clock, midnight, 1 a.m, just crying together, just dreaming together, talking about, man, what would it be like if one day God were to use us? But like you said, the long journey, the process that God has in front of everyone, that he needs fulfilled in our lives in order for us to be able to be used the way he knows we can be used. You know, because if you would have taken any one of us back in those days, we were all gifted, you know, gifting. And in most cases, gifting opens a lot of doors. But what you find is gifting may open the door, but then you get crushed under the weight of opportunity or responsibility because you don't actually have real substance in your life to not just show up somewhere, but to be sustained, you know, to actually be in a place of longevity where you don't just arrive, but you actually thrive and you further develop and you grow and go with God into greater opportunities. Because gifting isn't necessarily going to keep you in that place. You know, and that's one thing that I can definitely say about Anna, and one of the things that I admire and it's been such a joy to watch over the years is she could have very easily done something earlier, but it would have been out of gifting. You know, like for people that heard you sing years ago, it was like, oh wow, you know, she's got a great gift, like she's got an awesome voice, like she's got talent. You know, but there's something about being processed by God that turns gifting to anointing, you know, that changes talent into presence, that you just can't fake it. Like you can't manufacture it. You can't work it up in a moment as hard as you may try. Like either God has really done something in you or not. You know, like you can't bring something out that God hasn't necessarily worked in. You know, and one of the things that I love now is, I was just, as a matter of fact, sharing it with somebody the other day is, you know, now when I hear her sing, me personally, I just don't hear talent or, you know, gifting, but her voice has been textured with the process. You know, like there's depth and layers. There's the woundings and the sorrows of the Lord. You know, Paul says to know him in the resurrection power, obviously, but also in the fellowship of his sufferings. You know, there's the fellowship of his sufferings from the yielding to the process, you know, in the long years of waiting and contending and not being willing to jump out, you know, a year too soon or a day too soon or a moment before it's time. You know, so for me, it's such an amazing joy, even for all of us, to see the real processes that have been in front of us, you know, that we've actually had to walk in real places with God to become something, to be ready for something like this. And not just because we had a gift, get out and believe we could just do something, you know, but to become something now to where God could do anything, you know, is just amazing.
And that's what I love about when we were praying through what to even call this project. Mike had a word and I had a word, and it was raw encounter. He had encounter and I had raw. And it's what I really pray that comes off of this project, and when you hear the music, when you hear the words that are spoken, that you would have yourself a raw encounter with the Lord, that it's not about perfection and it's not about performance, but I pray that you would hear really like what Mike was just speaking about, just the history with the Lord and the walk and the process that we've all been through, and other people that are on that you'll hear from. Like it didn't happen by night. It's really come through that process, and that's what I pray, is that you would find yourself in that place if you haven't already had it, and even dreams that you've had, that you would find yourself in this encounter again where you can see that it's not about perfection and it's not about performance, but it's just about encountering Him and letting it be real and letting it be raw in a way that can touch others and they can relate to what it is that He's doing in your heart and your life.
When I considered who would join us as far as contributing in preaching, I looked at the history of people that I had walked with, people that I even presently do life with, and really wanted to weigh in who's had a significant impact on my life personally. Not just who's gifted, not just, you know, who can come and has great articulation, but someone who I've walked with in a close way, that's had an encounter with the Lord that has provoked me to want to go after God in a greater way than I am right now. And I can say that the four guys that have joined us on the project, first and foremost, my father-in-law, the man that laid hands on me the night when I met Jesus. You back in 2002, standing in his church that he was pastoring at the time. The night I met the Lord, this was the man that laid his hands on me and brought me to Jesus. So first and foremost, I wanted to invite him to come and to join us. Dan Kalinda, who was actually the worship leader at the church that I got saved at. He was the first person who befriended me after my salvation experience. Eric Gilmore, who has had an incredible impact on my life for years. I actually met Eric years ago through Dan. We used to go out on the weekends and go street preaching after I had gotten saved in Tampa and Plant City in Orlando. And then Tyrone Gray. I can say there's nobody in all the world that I know like Tyrone. Tyrone is a powerful, powerful man of God, as they all are. And these were the men that I wanted to come and join us. People that were powerful in word and in deed. People that I knew had a special touch from the Lord on their life. And people that I knew that provoked me in my own walk with the Lord because of the encounter that they've had. And just considering the overall theme of the project, I felt like it would be a perfect fit for all of us to align this way. We had no communication about what we were going to speak about. None of us knew what the others were going to talk about. We didn't go behind the scenes and script it all out. Even in the way that I invited the guys into the project, I said, all I'm asking you to speak on is an encounter with Jesus. That's all I want you to talk about. What does that mean to you? And whatever the Lord puts in your heart, then let's go with that. And it was amazing because there's one of the speakers, because I opened, and as the night was progressing, there's one of the speakers that as I was listening to what he was sharing, I was knowing that I was coming back around at the end to close. He began sharing on almost everything that I had planned, because again, we hadn't talked. So it's not like we got together beforehand and I thought, oh, well, okay, wait. If you're gonna talk about that, then I can't. So we were in the moment and he just began sharing on almost everything. Now, obviously the wording is different and the presentation is different because we're all unique. But I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I've got to call an audible. And so in a moment, obviously, and God is faithful. But it just shows the unity that we all shared in the Spirit. That really what the Lord wanted to bring out got communicated by each individual person in such a special way that it was really just beautiful to be a part. I was excited just to be there, knowing what was going to happen, that I actually got to be there. I was just excited about that.
So the way the band came together, it was kind of almost like the same scenario as, how it was a no-brainer for me to be a part of this. I knew it was a no-brainer for a certain group of people to pull together and kind of help, bring the arrangements together and be part of the band. And I always joke and say I put together a band of best friends, and all the guys from Amos, who has traveled with me many times, playing on the road, playing keys, and he's my MD now at my home church. One of my closest friends. Every one of them, starting with Amos, but every one of them have the heart that I was looking for. And because of Mike and Anna being special people to me, I knew, and because the project was special and what God was going to do through it is special, I knew it had to be special people to be a part of that. And so, a lot of times, you're a part of projects with different musicians and singers, and sometimes people, musicians and even worshipers tend to be divas sometimes. And I just knew, we weren't going to deal with that. So all of these guys just have the right heart. They love God. They're really passionate about worship. They're passionate about music. And they're really easy to get along with. Just great to be around. and they're all like family. So Amos Pierre, and then Mike Bajaya, he played bass, and he's actually an MD at Evangel in Jacksonville. And, you know, Mike and I have known each other for several years. He and his wife are like family to me. And Hagen Anderson, or actually they knew Hagen as well. Just, man, I don't know. I don't even know what to say about Hagen other than just the humility he walks in. And he's so gifted. All of them are so gifted. And then I call the two guys, the two electric players, I call them my M&Ms because both of them are named Matt Furman and Matt Nunnally. Matt Furman plays with me every Sunday at Calvary, and we always talk about how much of a blessing he is to us, just his heart, his passion. His gift obviously is insane. And then Matt Nunnally from Jacksonville, again, like family, you know, and these guys are just excellent musicians. I just knew they would be super creative also in the process, because as a producer, it doesn't mean that you come in and you dictate everything. It just means that you kind of oversee the arrangements and the process, the writing and all that kind of stuff, if there's going to be any writing involved. But each and every one of these guys contributed to the creativity of these arrangements, and were really sensitive to the Spirit. Because Anna, we knew that she wanted to be free to flow, so we had to plan on our part to kind of format the songs in a certain way, and then leave them open-ended and say, but Anna, you know, but whatever they feel led to do, we wanted them to be free to do that in the moment. So, you know, you have Matt Nunnally and Matt Furman, and then Nick Edwards, who played drums. Now, Nick has played drums for me since he was 15 years old. That was the first time he played drums. He was 15 years old and has traveled with us. And man, I just knew he would play what needed to be played. He's such a solid drummer, so gifted, so talented, and anointed. All the guys are anointed. And then my good friend Mark Grammaticus, he played percussion. Same thing. No one was in this like with a huge ego. They just were so excited to be a part of it. And then Ethan Byerly, another great friend, he played acoustic. And just, man, these guys are anointed. They are so anointed. And hopefully I didn't leave anybody out. I don't think, right?
I think so.
But all these guys, like I said, they had the heart that we wanted behind this whole project. And we knew we didn't have to deal with egos. We didn't have to deal with, you know, anybody wanting spotlight or wanting credit for anything. These guys, they wouldn't even dream of wanting their name to be even mentioned. Yeah. And so it was just great. It was fun. All of the rehearsals, they worked so hard. You know, we had, man, they all have full-time jobs, but came in dedicated, committed to seeing it through, and man, they did it with such excellence. Every one of them very professional. And I mean, I know when they met, I know some of them knew Mike and Anna already, but when the rest of them met you guys, they fell in love with you from the start. So it was just a no-brainer. You know, you want people that have the same heart and are gonna not kind of go against what you're feeling in your spirit. Yeah. You know, there are a lot of people that would be like, no, we want it to be this way. It should be this way. It should be this way. But man, everyone was just sensitive to the Spirit. And I think that's what made this so good. And you'll hear that in the songs. A lot of them are kind of open-ended. And that was because, you know, a lot of times you prepare, and that preparation is what leads to the flow. And so it's not chaotic at all. It's prophetic. Yeah. Prophetic worship. You know, another part of this is video. And, you know, Mike and Anna just really trusted me with this whole process of producing. And I knew what kind of the idea of how we wanted it to be captured, and kind of how spontaneous it was going to be. And so I wanted someone that was going to work well in that environment. And so Chad Borgart, who's actually filming this right now, man, same thing. Loves what he does, so passionate about everything he does great work. And I knew we weren't going to have to deal with anything that was contrary to the heart behind this project. And so I knew he had to be a part of this. He's like my little brother. So it's just, this whole project really brought together family. And it was kind of like a reunion for us too, because we've known each other for so long. But this whole thing has just been one big family.
So when we were considering, just even back at the beginning, talking through speakers and obviously asking John to produce, there was no doubt in my mind that John would be a part, not only just to help produce, but to be there and support, to sing, to use his gift and his talent, and really like my very own mentor there. It was just an honor and so special that he would agree to even, on one of the songs, share his own piece that he wrote from his heart. And, you know, so it's special all around. But we saw one other person and we prayed through for a while who it was supposed to be, because we knew it was 3 people, but I didn't have clear direction as to who it was supposed to be. So we spent time praying, and during that time when we were on the fast, the Lord brought Demetria Stallings into our life, and I had the privilege of meeting her. But back when Mike met her, he knew he was meeting her for me. And so the Lord, just in his graciousness, helped us form this bond and unity, and what she carries is special, and just the way she champions people, and yet her bend for prophetic worship and to let the sound of heaven be released. So it went without a doubt in my mind to pray into asking her. And I remember the morning I was standing in our bathroom and I was praying, and she dropped in my spirit, and I really felt like the Lord was asking me to ask her. But again, I just met her and we were forming this friendship and bond and unity in the spirit. And so at that same time, I was, praying about it and asking the Lord about it, and my phone rings, and it was Mike that was calling me, and he said, hey, he was like, babe, he's like, I was just driving. He's like, and how do you feel about asking Demetria to be the 3rd person on the project? And I was like, yes. I had just prayed about it. So, and just even everything leading up to it, the times that she flew in and we got to practice, and what was released in the room, even during practice, and what happened was just special, to even just close in that knit and that bond even tighter. So it was it's been an all around just special project that I really believe the Lord is going to use to touch many, many people.
We had a cool moment in one of the rehearsals where we were just kind of flowing for a little bit. And then, God gave Demetria a word, and she started sharing it, and then it ended up turning into everyone being blasted. And
as it usually does.
There was a super soaker in there, but it was but it was special, and I loved it because, our rehearsals, we weren't like super like, okay, we got to learn this and then move on. We got to learn this and then move on. We got to learn this and move on. We wanted it all to kind of shape organically, and not to be something that even we were trying to force to happen, like force an arrangement to happen. So all the arrangements, they just happened because we prayed at the beginning and said, Lord, whatever you want to do with this, you do. And I don't think we could create anything better than the Creator himself. So him creating through us is what made this whole process cool, because it took the pressure off of us of having to make something happen. And so, our rehearsals were pretty special because they turned into just flow and just worship and encounters with God, even then, raw encounters with God, even in rehearsals. So I think that's why that's another part of the reason why the night was so special, was because that pressure was relieved long before that night. And Mike and Anna made it clear that God was going to move and we were going to be sensitive to him. So it doesn't need to be this, it doesn't need to be that. And so immediately you go in just alleviated, going, okay, I don't have to work something up. Let's just let God do whatever he wants to do, and we'll hit record while he's doing it.
Yeah.
And so that was what happened.
I would hate to close out and not have the opportunity, or, really not just the opportunity, but the privilege to be able to pray for whoever may be watching. Maybe you find yourself in a place where you've heard a lot about an encounter with Jesus, and maybe the language makes sense to you, and maybe it doesn't. I know when the Lord came looking for me, I didn't have a history of church language. I didn't have a history of being brought up in the church. In fact, I was 21 at the point when I walked into a church, and I wasn't even there because I was looking for God. But maybe you've heard all of this encounter with Christ talk, and maybe you don't necessarily understand it all, but I'm not speaking to your intellect. I'm speaking right now to a heart within you that burns for the one that designed it. I'm speaking to you now about the one who formed you and fashioned you and longs to encounter you more than any of what you can work up in or from within yourself to put towards this God that has always been put towards you, so much so that he has given his son for you. And Jesus Christ as an offering, hanging on a cross, paying for my sins and your sins, that we might become the righteousness of God, is what this encounter with Christ is all about. And so I encourage you, even as you maybe have watched a portion of this or watched the entirety of it and have listened to these conversations, and maybe you don't understand it, but your heart right now is burning, and you know that though you can't articulate it, you want what you're feeling. And I tell you that it's for you, because God's eyes are upon you, his ears are open to you. He longs to be in a relationship, in a constant encounter with you. And so I would just take these next few moments in what I would consider to be one of the greatest privileges of my life to pray for you, that you would have this encounter with this Jesus that we've all encountered somewhere in our past. This Jesus that we encounter day by day. It's not an encounter, a one and done, but we just don't have an encounter. We live by encounter. And we continually encounter him. And he wants to continually encounter you. So right now, if you're feeling something in your heart, some heaviness on your chest, I just ask you in this moment, even as we've talked about, just say yes to God right now. Whatever that means for you, wherever you're living right now, whatever life looks like. I'm not promising you answers, but I'm promising you that Jesus will always be with you. Life doesn't necessarily get easier, but it's always better with Jesus. So Lord, I thank you right now for every person watching, Lord, and not just every person in general, but that one right now that you're speaking to. God, I pray that even as their heart is burning within their chest, that you, precious Holy Spirit, would make Jesus oh so real to them. That you would remove the veil, that you would open their eyes to be able to see and their ears to hear, and that you would wrap them up in this wonderful place of encounter with Jesus the Son. I thank you for overwhelming love that will pursue them to their last breath, even to the farthest corners of the earth, no matter what their history or their resume says or looks like. God, I thank you that your eyes are upon them and you are reaching out to them right now. So Lord, I pray be very real in this moment. And Lord, I pray that their heart would be soft enough to respond right now. For the scripture says, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart. I thank you, Lord, for soft hearts right now. Encounters with every single one of your sons and daughters. And right now, Lord, the one watching, mercy and grace, peace and rest and joy in abundance as they say yes to you. Lord, may they never be the same. In Jesus' name.